Tsosie. I'm the Attorney General for the Navajo Nation and work within the Department of Justice with the then Chile administration. Explain a few of the ways in which these policies affect the Navajo Nation's position in regards to the mining operations, the power plants, and how they affect the Navajo people and the Navajo government. And that's what I wanted to do, provide a brief overview. The perspective that we come to this discussion from is that we do have covenants with our own deities as to how we maintain a relationship with the earth and the universe that we exist in. That having been said, we also have certain relationships with the very governments that we have interactions with. The federal government, the states, and the cornerstones of those relationships are through treaties. We have a treaty of 1849. We also have a treaty of 1868, which forms the very basis of the relationship between the Navajo Nation and its citizens and the outside world, the federal government and the states. And in those treaties, there are promises, there are covenants contained in the treaties that specifically state, as an example, in the 1849 treaty, the federal government made an agreement with the Navajo people. 1849 treaty, towards the end, it says that the government of the United States shall, at its earliest convenience, designate, settle, and adjust territorial boundaries, and pass and execute in their territory such laws as may be deemed conducive to the prosperity and happiness of said Indians. So these laws that we're talking about that have a direct impact on the Navajo Nation, we're saying you need to consult with us. You need to interpret them in light of our existing agreements that form the cornerstone of our relationship and the negative impacts it may have. In addition to that, here in Article 11, this treaty shall be binding upon the contracting parties from and after the signing of the same, subject only to such modification and amendments as may be adopted by the governments of the United States. And finally, this treaty is to receive a liberal construction at all times and all places, to the end that said Navajo Indians shall not be held responsible for the conduct of others, and that the government of the United States shall so legislate and act as to secure the permanent prosperity and happiness of said Indians. And that's what we're asking for today, is that you give recognition to our voice, that there are agreements that say you'll consider our input. And that's one of the objections that we initially had, is that the tribes were not consulted when these actions were proposed. And it has a direct impact on our prosperity, on our happiness. And further, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about our economy here on the Navajo Nation. The federal government, by various case law, and before we even entered into these treaties, had established laws and policies and announced that they obtained title to the newly discovered lands under the doctrine of discovery. And by use of that doctrine, they control our lands and enact legislation as how we can use our lands. And in essence, they control the economy of the Navajo people. So we really don't have a say. So when these legislations come up, as we're discussing right now, we need to be consulted, and we need a certain amount of input to say this is how it will impact us. And the laws that we're talking about We're really not advocating against them. We think that they contain the essential elements that are needed. The only thing that we're asking for is some reasonableness in its application. And we don't want to hit with the full force of the law right at the beginning. We can't respond and we can't react. Our economy can't react. Our people depend on these industries for their very existence. And it would be difficult to make adjustments within 3, 4, 5 years. And in addition to that, because the federal government controls our lands, they control our economy. And it's very difficult to develop new industries due to the federal oversight. In 1921, oil was discovered in the San Juan Agency of the Navajo Nation. So we had a little bit of an oil economy. Federal government got involved. They set up a government for us, a business council, to approve leases, when before then, Navajos would have localized governments out there and form a central government for us. And then from there, we did a certain amount, enjoy a certain amount of benefits from the oil industry. In the 40s, uranium mining, the Cold War, supremacy for the United States government. Many of our Navajo people were sent into the uranium mines. And we're left with the residue of that. Over 500 unclaimed uranium mines exist on the Navajo Nation. But nobody is out there running around saying, let's clean that up, while we live with the contamination. Also, during the 50s, 60s, the federal government enacted the Navajo Hopi, I think it's called the Long Range Rehabilitation Act, where they sought to develop our coal industry and develop coal mines on the Navajo Nation. And the reason I bring these up these are the large-scale projects that employed many Navajos, not just a select few here doing weaving or here doing silversmithing and various other activities. These industries employed a lot of Navajos. And today, our coal mines that provide coal to the regional power plants are under threat, again, by the very government that created this economy for us, because of the manner in which the policies are being implemented. And what we're saying is, let's be reasonable, let's implement them as the law provides over a period of time, because we can't respond that quickly. That's what we're asking for. Lastly, because of the control the federal government has over those assets and resources that we could use and identify commodities in a capital market, we can't even do that. As a nation, because our resources are tied up, we don't have the ability to establish an internal capital market within the Navajo Nation. Because mostly outside of the Navajo Nation, the primary assets and the commodities are your lands, your oils, your minerals, and other things that have made Americans wealthy today. And to a large part, under these treaties, those were divested from us. But what little we maintain, the federal government still has a tight hold over those. So these are the things that we're asking for you to consider in this discussion. And this particular policy cannot be applied independently of the many laws and the many policies that affect Indian people. So that's primarily how I wanted to have this discussion.